Welcome to MilSpouse Matters, the podcast dedicated to encouraging military spouses. I'm Jen McDonald, and I was a military spouse for nearly 30 years until my husband's retirement. I'm also now the mom of an active duty son, a longtime writer for the military spouse world, and the author of the book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse. I created this podcast to bring you inspiration as you navigate your own military life, which can be amazing while also challenging. Whether you're dealing with a move, deployment, raising military kids, keeping your military marriage strong, or employment issues, we're going to talk about it. Military spouses, we're only stronger together. My goal is to bring you realistic hope and support for your own MilSpouse journey. So hello and welcome to this episode. I hope you are doing great wherever in the world you're listening. And whether you're a first-time listener or you have been listening for a long time, I'm so thankful that you're joining me today. Just a reminder, you can always find anything we mention in this show in this episode's show notes at jen-mcdonald.com. And you can also find the complete show archive along with lots of other resources at my site. So it's jen-mcdonald.com or milspousematters.com. They both go to the same spot. If you are looking to purchase bulk quantities of my book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, 10 copies or more, I do offer a 10% discount. So you can just send me a message on Instagram or email me at jen@jenmcdonald.net. So I hope that you listened to last week's episode on grief with Trevor Romaine. I think it was a really important topic and an uncomfortable topic, but I just feel like it is such a helpful resource. And along with that, he has many resources and books and digital downloads for kids at his site, trevorromaine.com. And if you use my code, all caps, MilSpouse Matters, you can get 15% off of any purchase there. So I hope that you will go and check that out, as well as listen to last week's show about grief and loss. So I am going to share a few of my favorite things. I did this last week. I'm bringing it back. And I forgot to mention, I had mentioned the really great travel site, sleepingontrains.com, which has been put together by a former military kid. And she is a competitive Irish dancer, young lady who's friends with my youngest daughter, and her name is Bailey. And I realized I never even said her name, so I just wanted to make that point. And if you are looking for travel tips all around the world, she does a lot of solo traveling and budget traveling, and I think you would really find some great tips at sleepingontrains.com. So a few of my other favorite things this week, as I mentioned, were Trevor Romaine's resources, his book and short movie for kids, What on Earth Do You Do When Someone Dies? So if you have something going on in your family, like you've lost a grandparent or somebody special to your child, these are such accessible resources for kids because he has spent decades working with kids, terminally ill children, kids walking through all sorts of hardship and grief, and he just has a way of reaching them. So I'd highly recommend that. And again, use my code for 15% off if you decide to get that, MilSpouse Matters. The other favorite thing, a couple of weeks ago, I had Lizanne Lightfoot from The Seasoned Spouse on to talk about her book, which is called Open When, Letters of Encouragement for Military Spouses. And it was just released a couple of weeks ago, and you can find it at Military Family Books, Elva Reza Publishing, Amazon. And it is just a really great compilation of letters. And so basically it walks you through first finding out about basic training to all the different seasons of military life, all the way through to looking at getting out. This would be a great read either for yourself or for you to give to somebody that is new to military life, or even further along the way. I think it's one of those things that would be perfect for like a gift basket or a little care package. So be sure and take a look at that resource. The other thing I wanted to mention for Jen's favorite things is the Pillar Deployment Retreat. I will be having Becky Hoy from Brave Crate, and she's one of the founders of the Pillar Deployment Retreat, which is coming up November 12th to the 14th. And she and I will be talking at the beginning of November, and you can hear more all about that. But mark it on your calendars now. It is free, and it is for military spouses going through deployment, and it's all online. and it's 3 days of online deployment encouragement, guidance, and giveaways for military spouses and significant others. So today's show, I am being joined by Julie Provost from Soldier's Wife Crazy Life. You might know her, and we'll talk more about what she does with that. But she is a National Guard spouse, and I've heard from a lot of you that this is something you wanted to see covered. So Julie talks a little bit about the transition from being an active Army family to National Guard, that how that transition was for them, ways that she's stayed connected. And she says it's a little bit easier for her because she is near an active Army post. So a lot of things that she did before haven't changed. I will also be having another spouse on later this fall who's also a National Guard spouse. So you'll be getting more input from various sources. I think it's always good to hear different perspectives. But I did ask the question in my Facebook group, the Christian Military Spouses Facebook group, if they had any tips for connecting with and feeling a part of the greater military community. Because that's what I hear a lot, is that sometimes Guard and Reserve spouses just feel disconnected from the greater military world. So here are a few of the comments. So Harvey said she connects with other Guard spouses through Facebook groups. Another spouse said, I've been an Air National Guard spouse for 18 and a half years. My support and friends come from our community of friends and neighbors and not necessarily others who may work at the base. To feel connected to other military spouses, I've had to do it online. Jessica said, I've been an Army National Guard spouse for 16 years. I've acquired friends and support through the different deployments and armories that my husband has worked at. He's active National Guard. I also started a military support spouse group during one of the deployments, and we would do once a month outings with just the wives and once a month outings with kids. And then I started a military spouse support group through my local church, and it's been going strong for 3 years. So I think one of the answers there is if you're not finding support, maybe you start something. I know that's not the answer we always want to hear, but reaching out and seeing if there are other people who are feeling like you do. And as always, let me know what you think about this topic if you have anything to add. And I am always looking to hear from listeners what you would like to see covered, what questions you have, or something that's just important to you. So send me an email or shoot me a note on Instagram. I love hearing from you. So let's get into the talk with Julie. Today I am talking to Julie Provost, and you may know her from her website, Soldier's Wife Crazy Life. She has been a military spouse for 16 years, active duty Army for 9, and National Guard spouse for 7, and she's a freelance writer and editor. She lives near Fort Campbell, Kentucky, with her National Guard husband and 3 boys. In her free time, she loves to read all the books, watch movies, and spend time with family and friends. You can find Julie at soldierswifecrazylife.com and across social media. So welcome, Julie. I'm so glad to be talking to you today.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I know you have a lot of good stuff to share. And I was talking to Julie before we started recording and letting her know that we have had a lot of requests for a National Guard spouse. So here we are. So I'm really glad to hear your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to that, I would love for you to share a little bit of your background as a military spouse.
Sure. So I met my husband after he got out of the Army. He had joined when he was 19, got out at 21, and we met when he was 25. And so that was like, oh, he's been in the Army. That's so cool. And we got married and we're living the civilian life. We had our oldest son. And when he was about a year old, well, I guess, yeah, he was 13 months old. My husband rejoined the Army. And we did not know what that process would look like exactly because it had been about 8 or 9 years since he had gotten out. Mm-hmm. And I had dropped him off at MEPS and I picked him up thinking, oh, he might have to go basic again. You know, this is going to be kind of a slow process. And he says, we're getting stationed in Germany and I leave in 2 weeks.
Oh, God.
I was like, oh my gosh.
So your first assignment as a military spouse, your first move was overseas.
Yeah. And so I knew, like, I had a feeling it would take us a little longer to get over there than what they told us. Mm-hmm. And that was true. And that was my first experience with hurry up and wait was getting all the paperwork done for command sponsorship and getting me and my son over to join my husband. And it ended up taking about 4.5 months. but we finally arrived in March of 2006 to Germany, and that was my welcome to the army, welcome to Europe, welcome to it all. But I think I'm really grateful for that because it kind of put me in, because even though it is Germany, when you're on the post, it is all military all the time. That's where you get your
Hmm.
mail. That's where you get your groceries. That's where, everything is. And that really helped me get used to the army, I think. But
Which
yeah,
post were you guys
we were
stationed at?
stationed in Schweinfurt first, and then we moved over to Grafenwehr. So
Okay. And how long were you all there?
4 years, 4 years.
I was in Germany at the same time. I
Oh,
was there from
awesome.
2008 to 2010 at Ramstein.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we had our second little boy over there. I mean, it was quite the experience. I'm glad we had
Yeah.
it. And then we PCS to Fort Campbell in 2010. And in 2014, he got out of active duty army. And the very next day joined the Tennessee National Guard. So
Wow.
we've been here. We're still in the same house that we lived in when he was active duty, and outside of Fort Campbell.
So what went into that decision to go from active duty to guard for your family?
It was actually a very sudden decision.
Mm.
They had asked him if he wanted to do that. And it was kind of one of those, he called me, he said, "Should I do it?" And I said, "Sure." And we just kind of went with it. So, and now here we are 7 years later. But it's interesting because we are at Fort Campbell. We
Hmm.
still shop at the commissary. Many of my friends are active duty army. So I know that that piece of guard life is not the same as it is for a lot of National Guard,
Yeah.
as they are in their hometowns or, far away from anything military related. So we're lucky in that we still have that piece of it. So,
Yeah. You've kept those ties in a lot of
mhm.
ways. So the
Mhm.
transition for you all, I mean, other than, you're not going to be moving necessarily, or
Mhm.
what has that transition been like since you are at Fort Campbell,
Mhm.
you have that part that's familiar, but what's the rest of it been like?
Well, it's been different because when he was active duty, is army Monday through Friday at least. Some,
Hmm.
when they go away and all that. And with the guard, it's very much in your face for a while and then you forget about it. So,
Mm.
like, he might go 6 weeks in between a drill. And so it's 6 weeks without really thinking about it that much.
Hmm.
And then other
Hmm.
times he goes 3 weeks, or he has his 3 week long training, or he gets called up somewhere. So we are a military family. We still live as one, but
Hmm.
sometimes we live as a civilian family.
You're kind of
So
got feet in both worlds.
yeah, it's like we're kind of both, and we can't forget. Like, I can never really forget that he's military, but
Hmm.
sometimes it doesn't really affect my daily life like it did when he was active duty. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does. I think for a lot of military spouses, they may not really understand
Hmm.
what the National Guard is. So maybe you could just give us a quick, National Guard 101 kind of
Yeah.
explanation.
So the National Guard is a part of the reserve. It's not the reserves, but it's a part of the reserve component of the military. And basically, because he's at the Tennessee National Guard, it's through the state, and he responded to the riots that were going on in Nashville.
Oh, wow.
The Guard has they will respond to natural disasters. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your state either.
Hmm.
Another
Hmm.
state could say, Virginia could need,
Could we borrow some
Tennessee.
people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll even do stuff like they did the vaccine thing.
Mm,
They've been sent down to the border. I mean, there's all sorts of things the National Guard will do. Um,
yeah. Well, it sounds like, so I think with military life, with active duty, you are always kind of living on the edge of when will they go for training, when will they go for a
mhm.
deployment. It almost sounds like the same sort of thing. It's just a different
Yeah, and
place
then
they're getting sent.
they still do deploy. They still go overseas. They still go to a lot of the same places active duty
Hmm.
does, but
They sure
when they're
do.
home, it can look a little bit different because they're not. When my husband was active duty, he'd leave every morning. He'd go to Fort Campbell, and
Hmm.
he'd come home in the evening, and that was his job. And
Yeah.
now he has a different job, and then he also has drill.
Oh, okay.
So it's he'll essentially work for, I guess like 12 days in a row because he's Monday through Friday's civilian job. Saturday and Sunday could be drill, and then another week. So that can be a little difficult at times.
That sounds a little
So,
exhausting.
yeah, I don't know how he does it
Oh,
really, but
goodness.
yeah.
Well, and then as far as military families go, other guard families, do you have a connection like you might if you were living
I
on base, or is it
actually
very
do
different?
not. I
Okay.
do not have a big connection.
I hear
Um,
that a lot. I do hear that a
and
lot.
I don't know if I looked for it. I don't know if I could find it very easily. I haven't
Mhm.
really looked for it. I haven't felt like I needed it per se, but it's not even active duty. Even if you didn't need it, it was still there. It was. I
Right.
felt like I was aware of it. He
Mhm.
like with the National Guard. I mean I can't even tell you. I don't
Yeah.
know I don't know any other guard families locally that like I don't know anybody. And we've
Mhm.
in the 7 years, I think we've had three FRG meetings,
I was about to
and
say, so do you guys even have, like,
we've
family
had like
support or yeah.
three of them, and
Oh
they've
gosh.
always been like during a holiday dinner or something.
Uh-huh.
Let's bring the spouses into a room for like 20 minutes.
And have dinner with a bunch of strangers, that sounds
Right,
great.
right. So it's a little I don't know. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that would change. I mean, they did go through a deployment. My husband did not leave on that deployment, and so I don't know if they had more within that, but
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot of family. I mean, they have had family stuff, but it's not consistent. It's not very often. And
Yeah.
it's not enough to where you would get to know people on that kind of level. So
So the support is not just built kind of built in like it
yeah, I
is.
don't know. It's an interesting thing because when we were active duty, I mean, there was always an FRG. There was always someone
Mhm.
watching out. There was always someone there, and I don't
Yeah.
know with the guard. It's not that it. I mean, there is an FRG, I think, but it's just not. I mean, I haven't really experienced much with it, so.
Mhm. Well, so as far as support then,
Hmm.
if a spouse is not living near a base,
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
guard spouse or
Hmm.
with plugged in the military community like you kind of already were,
Hmm.
well, your site is a great place to find
Yeah.
support, but is there anything in real life that you could recommend for guard spouses to feel more connected?
Yeah, I mean, I would look and see what your local community has. You'd be surprised. I mean, sometimes a civilian town will have, a support group, or a church will have a support group. You never really
Mhm.
know what's out there unless you look. If you feel up to it, like you might even want to start one and see if you can
Mm.
find the other guard families in your life. And it might be something like, a mother of a guard member who is out of a different state even, or
Right.
a sister, or another family member that maybe wants to get together once a month and just kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything big or anything, like just meet for coffee once a month.
Mhm.
But I do think in some civilian cities they do have groups. It's just maybe you need to look for them, which is, I know it's a hard thing to say, like you need to look for them, but it's hard. But to be honest, like the online community, that's where you can start,
Mhm.
because there's so many resources out there. There's so many Facebook groups. There's a National Guard Facebook group.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's just called National Guard Wives, maybe.
Mhm.
And I mean, people ask all sorts of questions in there. So you could go in there and be like, hey, I'm in Indiana, is there anyone
Yeah.
else in Indiana? And just try to use those kind of connections to see if you can find someone locally. Because you might feel like the only person, and maybe if you're in a really, really small place, you could be the only person, but most likely there are other guard families around you somewhere.
Mhm.
And you just have to find each other.
Yeah.
So I would use the online stuff to try to see if you can find anything, because there's probably stuff out there that maybe isn't being advertised or just isn't widely out there, like you might find in the active duty world, which does really suck, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of the
Yeah.
way things
Yeah.
are. And also just getting out in the community in general, in your local community in general, even if it's not military related, there's just something about connecting with other people. And you might be going through a hard time because your husband's deployed, and maybe a neighbor is going through a hard time because their husband lost their job. Like
Hmm.
to kind of connect in that way too, as we can kind of help each other through what we're going through, even if it's not exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if you are living near a base or a post,
Hmm.
guard families are allowed to
Hmm. Hmm.
access facilities. And
Yes.
I think most spouses groups welcome guard and reserve
Hmm.
spouses. Everyone I've been in did.
Yeah, I mean, I went to MOPS as a guard spouse here at Fort Campbell,
Uh-huh.
and that was totally fine. So, and I think there was another girl that was reserved. So, it's just finding those ways. And if you do live close to a post, like use it. Like, don't feel like
Mhm.
you don't belong because your husband or wife or partner is not active duty or has never been active duty. Like, you definitely belong. So,
Well, and it might feel intimidating. I was just thinking
hmm
about if you're just kind of coming on your own,
hmm
yeah, just take the step because
yeah,
there's probably somebody else there that's never met anybody there either. And I think spouses groups can be a great resource for
hmm
connecting and just getting that support for such a
hmm
unique lifestyle because
yeah.
it must be strange to be in the community and maybe your spouse is deployed and it's like you're just kind of on your own. I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Like nobody else is going through it. And that is one of the things I know that is really hard about guard life that I know I personally don't experience because I do live near Fort Campbell. But
Mhm.
that's where I say, like, try to see what's out there, go online, uh, find those connections, find the other people that are doing what you're doing, and
Mhm.
go from there.
Hey friends, I just want to take a moment to talk about one of our wonderful sponsors, SpouseLink. SpouseLink's philosophy is simple. Military spouses matter. It was created in 2012 by AFMA, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, and SpouseLink is the place where military spouses can connect with others who are living the military lifestyle just like they are. Connect with SpouseLink to get information and advice for your military family. And you can also meet up with one of their military spouse ambassadors on location or online for a fun and informative event. Or if you like to write, they're looking for bloggers. SpouseLink is always looking for military spouses who have something to share with their audience, whether it's a personal story based on your experience, career or workplace tips, parenting advice, or anything else that can support, inform, or inspire their audience. Head on over to spouselink.org to read their blog, connect with SpouseLink on their social channels, and then listen to their podcast At Home with SpouseLink, which is hosted by their awesome SpouseLink ambassadors. Remember, you can find all of this at spouselink.org, so check it out today. Well, I will tell you this, since my husband was always active duty and my sister's ex-husband he was Army and then Guard. But when he deployed, I'm not going to say I was jealous, but they had like a whole big thing where they sent them all off.
Oh,
And I was
uh-huh.
like, we never had that.
Oh, really?
No, because, well, okay, we did once, but my husband was Air Force. And so there was only once where like a good chunk of his unit went. And then after that, it was
Okay.
kind of just a few of them. So they had this big ceremony and they had like those, what do they call them? The Freedom Riders, the motorcycle guys
Oh,
that come
uh-huh,
in.
uh-huh.
And I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah, we always had the big ceremonies for the
Yeah.
active duty, um but yeah, I mean it can be different everywhere. So
Right, right. That was definitely a guard unit that like they were all going. And I
yeah.
was like, on one hand, it was super sad because I'm thinking
Hmm.
that's so many
Hmm.
people going at once. And
Right.
then, but then just the recognition I thought was really cool. So, I mean, yeah, they were near Fort Riley too.
Mm, okay.
So,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, are there any misconceptions that you think people might have about guard families that you would want to speak to? So maybe even other civilians or military family or active duty military families.
Yeah. So sometimes I hear people saying, am I a military spouse? Like being a National Guard spouse? Am I
Mhm.
really a military spouse? Or are they really military spouses? It's
Yeah.
like, yes, we are. Like, my husband puts on the uniform. He can be deployed. He goes and serves his country. He is in the military. I am married to him. I am a
Mhm,
military
mhm.
spouse. So I think there can be kind of this misconception that it's like, it's not the real military, and I will say that the guard can be more laid back than active duty, but
Mhm,
it's I mean, it's just different roles, different jobs. Just like the Army and the Air Force would have different jobs, different roles. It's
mhm.
you know the guard is the same. It's just a different. part of the army or part of the
Mhm.
military, you know.
Mhm. That's good. And yeah, you are real. You're definitely a real
Yep.
military
Yep.
spouse. Well, and does your blog, do you have specific resources for Guard?
I do have posts on there for National Guard. I do have a National Guard page that is National Guard and Reserve Spouses with Soldier's Wife Crazy Life.
Mhm.
It is relatively new, so there's not a whole lot there. But and it's a little tricky because um, I feel like I have a lot more general military or deployment
Mhm.
related information, but there are some National Guard stuffs on there. And if anyone is a National Guard spouse and would love to do a guest post on my blog, I would love that too, to
I was just
kind
about
of
to
give,
ask you, are you looking to connect with anybody?
yeah, because I can give my perspective, but it's just one perspective, and it's, you know, like I live
Mhm.
near Fort Campbell, but there are other perspectives that I can't relate to because I'm in the situation that I'm in, that I would love to hear from too. So, and I'm
Mhm.
sure my other readers would as well. So,
Well, now this might sound like a stupid question, but do Guard families move? You know, they don't like get a new assignment somewhere, or can they do that where they?
no, like we don't get moved with the military.
Mhm.
I believe active National Guard does,
Yeah, and
but not
reserve
the,
do as well, right?
yeah. But if we want to move, like if we wanted to move to another state, it would just be a matter of us moving, us personally,
Okay.
and him transferring over to that state. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of what I thought was like, I think like a lot of people, Guard and Reserve kind of intermingle in our minds,
Yeah.
which I know is, like you said, it's part of it. But I did know active reserves overseas, and I thought,
Hmm.
can you move overseas as a
Yeah.
Guard
And
family?
yeah, so the military is not going to say, "Hey, you guys need to move to Maryland." You know, that's
Right.
not ever going to happen because he is now he has moved within the state of Tennessee where he had to drill.
Hmm.
So, but that wasn't like we moved with him or anything like that. So,
Well, I know that you have had your blog for quite some time. How
mhm.
how many years ago did you start
Well,
writing Soldier's Wife?
I actually started. It was it used to be called Julie the Army Wife, and I started that in 2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's really grown because I've
Hmm.
known of you for
Yeah.
years. And so
Hmm.
talk about what made you decide to start your blog and how it's grown. And I know you said you're looking for Guard spouses if they want to contribute it, and if you're looking for anybody else to contribute, just fill us
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, sure. So I was in Germany and it was the end of my husband's second deployment. We had gone to California for this summer and we had gotten back and we still had a couple months to go. And I was bored and
Mm,
I was like, you know, there there are other military spouses out there that feel the same way I do. Like I know it. So I'm just gonna start
mhm.
writing about my life and see what happens. And I had a friend that had a successful homeschooling blog, and she had this homeschooling community. And I'm like, I want that, but for military spouses.
Mhm.
And so I just started writing. I think my first post was about what to wear for homecoming, you know. And
Oh.
at the time, there was just a small group of military spouses on Twitter that were, you know, blogging. And I just kind of threw myself into that mix
Mhm.
and started getting a response. And it just kind of grew from there. So
That's incredible.
in the beginning, I kind of wrote about like not just military stuff, like whatever. And it's really transitioned to mostly military stuff
Mhm.
and just kind of niching down to that, which I think I like doing that.
Yeah.
I still include stuff about my life in my posts, but pretty much almost every single post is pretty hardcore military related. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here, I still am, you know?
yeah.
But although it's funny because our oldest is active duty now,
Hmm.
and so I find myself drawn to military parenting,
Oh, yeah.
resources, and
Hmm.
it's just interesting, but there's something if you've lived that life and
Hmm.
been a part of it, it has a pull and you wanna help people
Hmm.
through your
Hmm.
experiences, so definitely there with you. Well, and you said you lived overseas. Did you all just live overseas once?
Yeah, just
Did
for 4 years, but one time, yeah.
I get a lot of questions from people, especially that are maybe facing their first overseas move and
Hmm.
like, I don't know if I should go, or they just have some hesitation or fear. And of course, you were in one location and every location is different, but if you
Mhm.
could share maybe a couple of your experiences living overseas and just some advice for those who might be
Yeah.
facing that for the first time, I think that would be great.
Well, I think that if you have the opportunity to go, go. Like, don't overthink it,
Mhm.
just go. This is why, because you might not ever have that opportunity ever again.
Mm.
When we went over there in 2006, since then, many bases or posts have closed down.
Yeah, right.
So the chances of getting stationed over there is a little bit smaller.
Mhm.
And and you never know when that opportunity will come again. And I know it's scary. I know
Yeah.
it could be way out of your comfort zone, but I think it's also a good way to kind of get used to the military life because you're kind of in a position where it's like sink or swim. You have to get off the post. You have to, you know, try new experiences just because you're in a different country. Like it kind of forces you to kind of make those steps that you can take that experience with you for the rest of your military life, whether you're only stationed in the US from then on, it can really help you develop those skills that you need later on. So
Mm.
I think, and just the experience of visiting another country and seeing what's out there and seeing other cultures and the way other people live is huge. And you can't, I mean, yeah, you can visit and kind of get a taste of that, but by living there, you really get to experience that. And especially if you have kids, my two oldest boys, they had been to 11 countries by the time they started kindergarten. I mean, it was
Mm.
like mind blowing kind of when you think
Right.
about it. And I mean, that never would have happened if he hadn't been in the military. So,
Oh, agree. I
yeah.
was just about to say it's so easy to travel. I know that I have a couple of friends that are stationed overseas and they went right at the beginning of COVID and they have not had that experience,
Mhm.
unfortunately, because the
Yeah, that's what makes me so sad is
that does.
it's not a normal experience right now.
No. Hang in
It really
there.
isn't. But I'd still say go because you
Yeah.
never know, and even the little experiences that you can have, can be really impactful for your entire life.
Oh,
So,
for sure. I
yeah.
still miss doner kebabs. I was talking to somebody
Oh.
about the day. We used to get those every week after church.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of just a little
Aw.
fast food. And I was like, gosh, could really go for one of those.
It's so funny because it's like all those little things that you miss that sometimes you don't even think about, and then, like, you're just reminded, like,
Right.
I used to get fresh flowers all the time or,
Yeah.
I used to be able to walk everywhere, and I love doing that, and
Yeah.
it's the little
Yeah.
things like that you miss.
We came back from Europe. I don't know what the deal is with the toilet height, but sometimes I'm like, why are our toilets so low?
I love that. It's just the little things. It's like when what was it? We had flown in for a visit, and I had taken Space A.
Uh-huh.
And we were at a USO and I needed to call my parents and I couldn't figure out how to do it because it had been so long since I
Yeah.
had to call from like America, like call them from
Right.
America, that I was like, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do.
0, 1, what? Wait, what? That's
But
funny. That's funny. Yeah. I mean, we've been back for years and I still, once in a while, I'm going, like, what in the world? Why do we do it this way?
right,
So
right.
I think it gives you just a very unique perspective.
Yeah, and I also think the military community over there is just so close and tight knit. When you hear people say, "Oh, the military community is such a good community," and so they take care of each other, and you might just be like, "I don't know what you're talking about," but like
Right.
that was my experience over there, and I probably helped too that we were at such a small post originally. The first post, Schweinfurt, was only 3,000 soldiers, and
Now, where
like
is that?
it's like it's in Bavaria. It's
Oh, gosh.
like
Okay.
I want to
Beautiful.
say two
Beautiful.
hours from Frankfurt,
Mm-hmm.
an hour from Nuremberg. So
Wow.
I mean, and most of them were deployed at the same time for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
and that was an experience I never had again.
Yeah.
Because it was all of us were going through it, and no one was really going home on the weekend because you couldn't.
Right. It makes it
And
very different if you don't have family
yeah,
accessible.
hmm
And I have found that at some remote bases in the States as well, where it's a little bit far, but even then you can still hop on a plane usually and get home.
right,
And over there, you have to plan for it. You have
hmm
to, it is a very different feel. It's a very, always call it like a Mayberry feel. And we
yeah,
had that when we were stationed in Guam too, because it's very far.
oh yeah,
All you have is each other. Of course, you make friends off the
hmm
post or base, but it's just such a tight-knit community. If you want it to be, I mean, of
Mhm.
course you can hold yourself back, but I would highly recommend jump
Right.
in.
And like for me, with someone I had an 18-month-old when we got there, and then I got pregnant right away, and the like just starting my parenting years, in
Yeah.
this situation where my husband was gone so much, like being able to have those other spouses around, like all over the place, and just events and community things. I mean, it was so nice to have that. And it was a little bit harder when we moved back to Fort Campbell. I mean, there still is a lot of that, but it just was very different. So,
It is. Everybody has their lives and
hmm hmm
you don't need each other as much. I think you just
no,
need each other so much when you're living
you
overseas.
do.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing your perspective and hearing, about your transition from active duty to National Guard. And I really think it will help other spouses that are kind of in that same boat and maybe making that transition right now. So I hope that listeners will reach out to Julie and check out her blog and check out her social media because I know you're very active and
hmm
she has great tips. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we close?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone would like to guest post on my blog, I would be welcome. Like, just send me an email, and you can send it to soldierswifecrazylife.com with the subject guest post, and I'd love to hear from you. So,
And we will include all that in the show notes.
okay.
So it was great talking to you today and hearing your perspective.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And listeners, I hope you're doing great wherever you are in the world. And be sure and connect with Julie on social media and at her site, and we will share all those places. Thanks for listening to the MilSpouse Matters podcast. Connect with me at milspousematters.com or on social media as @MilSpouseMatters. You can find my book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, on Amazon and other booksellers. Love the show? Please leave a 5-star review in whatever podcast player you're listening, and then share it with someone else who could use it too. Until next time, have a great week.